Okay, thank you. All right. Well, we are now ready to go. So here is the first slide, which I usually spend, as you can see, a little bit of time adding animations and whatnot. So we are going to be talking about big time PWA using GraphQL and Amplify DataStore. But before we go into the topic, let me do a small intro. And this is my name. I'm Gerard Sans, and I start with this slide because sometimes it's difficult for people to pronounce my name. I'm originally from Barcelona, so that's why I start here. I'm a developer advocate for AWS, and as you can see, I'm a little bit crazy. I have a cat. I also made these funny T-shirts with developer, which I found on Twitter. And this is like my brag slide. So this is going to be my 160 talk. And when I was able to travel, I traveled to 37 countries. So I guess now it's not even possible, but it's nice to look at it from time to time. So here we are. And probably just getting into the talk now. So probably the first question that I would like you to do yourself is, what is offline first? And this is before we go into touching progressive web apps and PWAs, I want to think a little bit about offline first. And as web developers, maybe you are not used to focus on this question. So that will be our first stop. So what do you think offline first means? And if you think about it, the main thing that you want to avoid when going offline is the dinosaur screen. And maybe if you have played this game, when you go offline and you see the dinosaur, you need to you can press the space bar and you can play this game, which obviously it's fun and all that, but if you have a cool app that you want to your users to use, that's probably not the best experience. So what we're going to do is we're going to focus on what is offline first for web. And I think the first step is clear at this point. We want to avoid the dinosaur, so that will be making our app offline ready. And that will be our first goal. And the next thing we are going to focus in is in creating a great user experience. And this will involve a few things. And probably the first one would be to notify the user when it goes offline. So that's one thing to note. Some applications, they go to show just a placeholder, like something like, okay, the application is offline. It will get ready to use when you go back online. But we want to provide a better experience. So we will look into that. Another thing that we will be doing is adding what I call native-like features. And this will look more like native app features that you are used to use on everyday basis with your mobile phone, but you will consider those when you are using your mobile app. All right. The next thing that you will start thinking is, how are you going to provide a reliable storage for your users? And while you are offline, you probably want to store any data that the user creates at that point. And probably most importantly, you want to synchronize that data with your data source when you go online again. So that would be the first thing that I want you to think about when you go and build an offline first app for web. This is the intro. So at the end of every section, I will go and show some funny cats. So get ready for that. This is the first section. So give yourself a pat in the back. We are ready to go for the next area. And the next thing I want to focus on is progressive web apps, or also PWAs. And we will look into what makes a PWA app, and this will be going through the different core requirements. The first one will be that the PWA needs to run on a secure transport layer, and this will be using HTTPS. For our app, that will be our first requirement, and we will be hosting our app in a HTTPS domain. So that's the first thing. And the main reason for that is that the way offline apps work, you want to make sure that the JavaScript and also the assets and also the user data is secure. The next thing we will be looking at is the service worker. And the service worker will allow you to run your app offline. So that will be the main responsibility for it. I will show you how the service worker works for your app, but that's something that we need to take into account. The next thing will be what is called the web app manifest. And one feature that PWAs provides you is being able to run in different platforms and devices. And here I'm showing you desktop. There's also mobile, and I'm also showing this tablet. So that's a whole range of devices that you will be testing your app that these are usually not available for your web app. So let's look at how the service worker behaves while offline. So here we have the network. It's showing as offline, and we won't have access to the network for this example. And at this point, the user is showing the index.html. So this is a single page application, and the user wants to refresh. What will happen when we refresh while we are off the network is that the request from that index.html page will go through the service worker. And here in this example, I'm showing the app.js and also the logo. This is just an example. There will be many more requests, but this will be part of the assets for your app. The service worker will be listening to these requests, and it will be doing something pretty awesome, which will be checking with the cache if there are any assets that have been preloaded when we install the service worker. Here we can see that these couple of requests are going into the cache, and if there is a match, it will be returned to the browser. So for the browser, it will be as if the application is online. Of course, these will be the assets that we have preloaded when we install the service worker. So that will be the behavior. Of course, this may come to a surprise. So this is more. These are the reactions usually from web developers, as your app, when using a service worker, will be able to behave and work offline. So let's now go to introduce AWS Amplify. And AWS Amplify allows you to create your apps in the cloud. One concept that I want to introduce at this point is full stack serverless. And maybe you are familiar with serverless. Full stack serverless includes the front end. So this is going into the back end and adding the front end and making the bridge between the two. So when you are using full stack serverless, you're both developing in the cloud, but also including the front end side of things. And AWS Amplify will help you build these kind of applications very easily. These are some of the platforms supported today, and these are mainly web and mobile. So you can see all the usual suspects. We have React, Angular, Vue, of course, JavaScript. There's also support for Next, React Native, and then we have Ionic, Android, iOS, and also Flutter. Flutter is now on preview, but you can also go ahead and try it out. So this pretty much support across the different options for web and mobile. And this is an overview of what you have available when using AWS Amplify. So these are different pieces that you can use independently, but they are all available to you. So the first one, it's the Amplify framework. So this is a set of libraries that you can use. And these are open source, so you are able to also contribute and help build the ecosystem for Amplify. There's also developer tools that we will be showing during this talk. And of course, the cloud services. In this case is AWS services. And in the middle of it, we will have the Amplify CLI. And this is very close to what you are familiar, which is the Angular CLI. And this will be some commands to build these full stack serverless apps that I was talking about. So let's look at the Amplify framework. As I was saying, these are some open source projects that you can contribute. And these are what we call categories based. And I will show you some of the categories that we support natively, but these are covering all sorts of features that you will be using across your apps, like authentication, API access using REST or GraphQL. There will be also access to all sorts of features that I will cover later. This is as the Angular CLI itself, this is opinionated, and this will provide some scaffolding options to run your apps in the cloud. So this is what I meant by opinionated, and I'm going to show some of these architectures later on. There's also escape, what I call escape hatches. So in any time when you're running these Amplify CLI commands, you will get default architecture that you will be able to use from the get-go. But if you want to change that original design, you can also configure it to your will. So that will be coming with a lot of customized options for you. So this is the Amplify framework. As developer tools, I want to introduce you the Amplify CLI, and this will be running some commands on the terminal that will get you started. You will be able to create and manage AWS services without having to be an expert on those. So basically, it will help you start working with the cloud without having to be an expert on these separate AWS services. It has support for multiple environments, and when you are working, you probably will be using development environment, you will be using staging, Q&A, and also production. You can simulate those environments also using Amplify. So that's also supported. There's also support for local testing and mocks, and you will be able to test your applications without having to deploy to the cloud in every single build. So that will speed up your development. There's also an ecosystem of plugins, and I want to mention some of them. So there's video, there's docs accessible from the terminal. There's also time to live, which is this TTL that you can apply in your GraphQL schema. And these are all available and created from the community. So let's look at how the Amplify CLI development looks like. And this will go through the different stages of development. So whenever you start a new project, you will run Amplify init. Then as you add new features, you will use the different categories and run this Amplify add and the name of the category, very similar to how the Angular CLI works. That will change the local configuration, and in order to deploy and provision the AWS services in the cloud, you will have to run Amplify push. All of these commands will give you some prompts, and you will go through all of the settings as you go through the different steps. At any point, you can go back and run Amplify update and the name of the category if you want to change the configuration that you use initially. And also if you want to extend and add new features. So this is kind of an overview of all the different commands. And we are ready to look into another feature, which is the AWS Amplify console. If you are familiar with AWS services, you know that you have access to a console for each of the services. Amplify is no different, and this will be the service that you can access from the console. The way it works is that it will give you access to an auto-deploy feature that will run on every commit. So you can control when you want to redeploy your app by linking your project to this feature. This will give you seamless CD/CI and also coming with all of these nice features, which is deploying globally, having access to custom domains, and also using branch-based deploys. Of course, this is an atomic deploy, so if it fails at any stage, it will just roll back changes, so your release won't be affected. You can also secure access to these different environments and releases. So you can share this, for example, with the Q&A team. These are some of the hosting repositories that are supported. So we have GitHub, Bitbucket, GitLab, and Code Commit. And there's also a manual option. All right. So let's look at some of these categories that we have for Amplify. And these are some of the most common categories. So we have authentication, API that will give you access to REST and GraphQL. These are interactions, which is access to chatbots, analytics, and also extended reality. So you can do a lot of things by adding a category to your project. There's also access to storage, Lambda functions. Also, when you want to host the application, you can add hosting and notifications. If you are interested in doing machine learning and artificial intelligence, there's also all these other services that you can use. So you can translate, you can also use text-to-speech, also speech to text, image recognition, video recognition, and also use Comprehend that will give you metadata from a document. So there's plenty of options. For this talk, I'm going to cover authentication and API with GraphQL. So that's going to be just a little bit of what is available. These are usually the reactions from developers, but don't get too scared. I will keep it very light for you. So in this talk, I'm going to be showing and demonstrating the Chatty app. And you have this Angular tutorial that you can follow if you use this URL. So you can come back here and you will be able to build this app on yourself. And this is a screen capture, so you can see how the UI looks like. This is a single room real-time chat application, so people can log in. Different users can log in and share their messages. You can see here an example. There's also an option to remove the messages if it gets very noisy. So we are going to be demonstrating this. Maybe I'll do a little demo. So let's do that. So this is a demo. So I just logged in using my my username, and I want to demonstrate how this works. Hi there. I'm speaking at Angular app. All right. So this is how it looks. And all the messages all my messages will appear on the left side, and any other messages that other users are sharing on this screen will be using the right side. So one thing I want to show you is if I go offline. Let's go very quickly offline. So I'm showing the developer tools, and I can change the network to be offline. And right here, I'm gonna reload the page so you can see the dinosaur. And I'm going to play the game, so you can see also that pressing the space bar, I can play the game. So this is what we want to avoid. All right, so this is a small demo, just so you see the application working. Let's look at the architecture. So this is what we are trying to build. So we have the chatty app, and we will have this app hosted, and we are going to use the AWS Amplify console, and we are going to release every change that we do, every commit. It's going to rebuild the app, and it's going to include all of these assets and HTML, CSS, of course, and JavaScript. Then we will have another module, which is the authentication using Amazon Cognito. And you have seen that I was using my own username. So that's Sans. So that's already working. That will allow your users to sign up and also log in. So that's usually something that every app will need. And then probably more interesting will be how we implemented the data source. And in this case, we're using GraphQL with a GraphQL API, which is managed by AppSync. And the data source in this app is going to be Amazon DynamoDB, which is a document-based database. All right, so this is how the architecture will be looking. Now I want to show you how this looks on the terminal using Amplify CLI. So these are the commands involved. The first one will be Amplify init. So you need to run this command for every new project, and it will link your AWS account with that project. The next thing that you will run in order to build the chatty app will be the authentication category. So we are going to run Amplify add auth in order to do that. Then next, you would be running Amplify add API. And for this example, we are using a GraphQL API. And I'm going to show you how that will look like. And then finally, when you want to deploy and provision the services that will be involved, you can run Amplify push. And one thing that you need to realize is that that's going to implement and provision the services that I show you in the previous slide. So that's going to set up all of these services and all of the different configurations, so it will be ready to use. So this is how it looks. When developing the chatty app, I've used the GraphQL schema, and this is how when we build a GraphQL API will be the first step for us. And this is a type. So we are calling this type chatty. And I've used what is called a GraphQL transform in Amplify. And this add model will create all of the resolvers for you to be able to create new messages, update and delete messages. And it will also create some features to run queries, run mutations, and also implement real-time subscriptions. The actual type looks very much, if you are not familiar with a GraphQL schema, it looks very much like TypeScript. So we have some fields and also some types. And maybe the only thing that is not easy to follow is this exclamation point. And that means that this field is mandatory. The only one that is not mandatory is the timestamp, which is using a specific type, AWS datetime, and we are going to use that so we can show the messages in a timeline. Okay, so let's talk now about Amplify DataStore. And Amplify DataStore will allow us to work both offline and online. And while we are offline, it will work by using models, and these models will be automatically generated from our GraphQL schema. So you will be first defining your schema, then generating the models and using those models in your client. Those models will be using GraphQL behind the scenes, and first there will be using a storage engine, and in this case it's going to be IndexedDB. if we were working on a mobile setup, that will be using SQLite. So it's able to detect which architecture is using, which kind of device is using, and switching between these two. That will be storing all of the user data on the device. When we go online, we are going to be using the sync engine. And the sync engine is going to look into the data store, and any data that has been created while the user was offline is going to be synchronized automatically for you. It's going to be using GraphQL, and that's going to be, in this case, using AppSync. AppSync is connected to DynamoDB, as I showed on the design, but you can also connect it to AWS Lambda or also Elasticsearch. So these are a few options that you have available. And we're going to be using Amplify DataStore so we can both work offline, and when we go online, it will be doing the synchronization for us. So that's quite a lot. Let me show you some code snippets of how that looks. And what is interesting is that we are going to be using some libraries which are part of the AWS Amplify project. And here we can see how we run the data store save, passing this model, which is the chatty type, and passing some of the configuration parameters. As you can see, there's some interesting feature, which is that you are not using GraphQL. Actually, you don't need to be familiar with GraphQL. It's good that you know about GraphQL in order to develop an app using Amplify DataStore, but you are not going to be developing GraphQL queries on the client. You're going to be using DataStore APIs. So let's look at how a query will look like. And for a query, we are going to introduce a new concept, which is the predicates. And here I'm using the predicates all. So that's going to make a query. This query is running locally. So it's going to use the data store on the device and run this query. Okay, so we are right on the money. Let's continue. Next step is making this app a progressive web app. So let's see what are the steps involved to do that. As we have seen when I show you the demo, when I refresh, it showed the dinosaur. So we still have that issue. So let's run the PWA plugin. So luckily, we have a plugin that we can run using the Angular CLI, and we will do most of the work for you. So these are some of the changes. This will involve, as we introduced at the beginning, the service worker and the web app manifest. So these are some of the resources, and it will also change the Angular configuration and your index HTML page. Let's see at the changes of the app module and the index HTML page. So here we can see the changes in order to add the manifest and some of the visual, the user experience for it. And because we are using a service worker, we need to make sure that the device is using JavaScript. And if it's not using JavaScript, we will show this message to the user. Okay, so now it's time to look into the app module. And in order to enable the service worker, we will be making sure that we are using a production build, and we are going to point to the service worker implementation, which providing the access to this NGSW worker JavaScript file. So that will be the service worker that we will be registering on our devices. In order to test your PWA, you need to set up this production flag, and just make sure that you enable this flag, because otherwise you won't be able to see the service worker or install the service worker. So that may give you like some issues when you are trying to build your PWA for the first time. When you run this production build, you will see some new assets, and I can point you to the main changes. We can see that there's some icons that are created on the assets folder. There's also the new index.html with the changes that I was showing. There's also the app web manifest that will give you different user experience for different devices. And of course, we will have the service worker configuration. One thing to mention here is the safety worker, and this is an improvement that has been added to the latest release, and it will avoid some of the issues that previous versions of PWA had when upgrading from one version to another. And sometimes people have found that they had to ask the user to do a manual uninstall. So this will be protecting you from that. And we can also see a configuration file, which is the ngsw.json, where you can change the configuration, and also the implementation of the service worker. If you were to deploy every change to production, that will get a little bit heavy. So one thing that I propose to you is that you run a local HTTP server, and these are the commands to do that. That will speed up your PWA development. So you can make sure that you run your app on the this folder once you have done the production build, and you can also make sure that you open a new browser window with these options that I'm showing here. Okay, so when I did this for the first time, there's something that I got as an issue, and this is the logo. And looking into the configuration, I realized that this was an external resource. So I didn't have this on the public folder as part of my build. So that was pointing to an external URL. Most of the configuration for the default PWA plugin is to include all of the dist folder and all of the assets. So everything else on my index.html page was included. So you can see the styles are working, and some of the even the login was working for my app, but not this external file. So let me show you what I did. And what I had to do is add a custom configuration, and I had to change this file, which is the ngsw config.json. And over here, we can find two asset groups, one for the app and another for the assets. So this is pointing to index.html page as the entry point, and the two different asset groups. So let's look at the first one, which is the app asset group. And here is using what is called the install mode. We have two options, prefetch and lazy. And for the app asset group is using prefetch. So that's going to be preloading all these assets that we include in this asset group, and they will be available once we install the PWA. So we have the resources, and we have different files, and we can use some of these patterns. So we can see that we included the index.html, we included the web app manifest, and all of the assets like CSS and JavaScript. To fix my issue, I had to include this new group, which are external URLs. And this is an array of the different URLs that we want to use. Here, you can see that this was pointing to GitHub, and this is the SVG that renders the logo. So you can also see this working for Google Fonts and any other external URLs that you want to use. Another option that you may decide to use is move the asset to your public folder, and then you can move that to the files section. All right, so let's look into the next asset group, and this is dealing with the assets. Here, the configuration is slightly different, and the way it's working is that during install, we are going to use the lazy mode, which is using an on-demand approach, and when we update the application, is going to be using a prefetch. So let's talk a little bit about this setup. If you imagine your PWA, we have talked about the different platforms. So for example, if we are using an Android phone, the first time we install the app, all of the assets, they are going to be loaded on demand. But because it's an Android device, it's only going to load the Android assets. The next time that we update the PWA is only going to use the Android assets to do an update. So that's going to be only the assets for Android. If you think about all of the different assets that will be, for example, targeting Microsoft systems or iOS phones, that will be much more efficient than, for example, prefetching all of the assets independently of the platform. But because we did that on demand using the lazy option, it's just going to update those. This will be using any asset on the assets folder, and then any of the images or assets included in these extensions. All right, so we are done with this section, and we can see another cat. Awesome. So now we have our chatty PWA. Let's see what we got at this point. So as I was explaining at the beginning, we have access now to different platforms. So we have web, of course, we have now mobile and desktop, and you can see that you can use those with the PWA features. The way you will install these on these different platforms is using the Add to Home Screen option. And this works both for mobile and desktop, and this is how it looks for mobile. So here on the left, I have Android, and on the right, I have an iPhone. So you can see the different options. So they look exactly like a native app, and I'm using an Angular logo. We can see how the app looks. It's looking very similar to our demo, but just a little bit smaller because it's running on a mobile. And we have achieved what I say is 99% offline ready. Let's look at what we have so far. So we can survive offline reload, so we don't get the dinosaur. We also can store the messages while offline. We are using for that Amplify DataStore and IndexedDB on the browser. We are also being able to share the messages when we go back online, and I'm going to demonstrate that. So let's go to another demo. So this is done. Let's look at this demo now. Okay, so we have two different users, and here we have Sans. It's now showing, hi there, I'm speaking at AngularUP, and then we have this other user, which is Robot. And one thing that I want to do is I'm gonna be using my mobile. I installed the app before, and here I'm going to write a message, and you can see it here. So just so you know, I have the app working on my mobile. I could also have installed this on my desktop, but I'm going to use the mobile version for that. So I'm going to write a message so you can see that it's real time. And here we can see the output. So for the robot, this is his message, which is now at the top. And for Sans, that's now on the right side. And we have the timeline with the timestamp, and it's all working fine. One thing that I want to do is now go offline. So let's do that. And before I go offline, I want to show you how this is being stored. So we have seen this. Let me close that. Or let me keep it open for now, and I'm going to show you how this is looking. So we can see the web app manifest. These are some of the options and some of the configurations, with also including the logo. There's also the service worker. We can see the different options that I can use. And here we have the catch. And if we look at the catch, we will see the different pre-catch assets. These are part of the build. And these include all of the different URLs. One thing that I want to be looking is at the SVG that I fix. So this is the SVG that I included. So this will be preload on the catch. One thing that I want also to look at is the indexed DB. So I can see how the data is being stored. So this is on the user chatty. And here I can see the two different messages. Let's see if I can show the details. So these are the details, the user robot, and hi everyone. That was the last message, and also the message from Gerard Sans. So this is the local configuration. Probably one thing that it's most interesting now is that I can go offline. Let me just go offline. And I can reload the application and it's still working. One thing that it has happened is that I've lost, let me just reload. And of course, I need to go online just to log in. Okay. Okay, so now I'm back. So I'm going to go offline. And one thing that I want to test is that I can do a reload. And on the network, I will see that all of the different assets are being served by the service worker. So my service worker is pre-catching these assets, which include JavaScript and CSS, and also the different external resources like the logo, and it's all working. There's still one thing that I haven't done, and this is what I want to point out here. When I'm offline, the user cannot see that information. And one thing that I want to do is improve the user experience. And one way to do it is by using Flag. And this is going to be the implementation. So I'm going to introduce an offline property, and I'm going to use that flag to show a message and change the UI. I think to do that is introducing this new property. And in Amplify, we have access to a hub, and we can listen to different events on the data store. For this feature, I use network status, and I'm going to set my offline flag using that active property on that event. This will give me the option to show a different UI using NGUPEx, and that will give the user enough visuals and information so he can decide if he wants to keep the conversation going or not. One thing that it will also be doing is, because Amplify DataStore also works offline and online, it will synchronize the data when we go back. So let's do that. We can see how the robot is being offline. And I'm going to do this. I'm going to create a sequence of messages. So I'm going to start a sequence with number 1. And I'm going to continue the sequence on my other client. So we can see here, this is like a small demo. So I'm gonna write these different messages, and of course the messages on the client that is online, they keep coming in, and the messages on the robot, because it's offline, they cannot be synchronized. So I'm gonna go off online, and this could be, for example, if you go underground and then you get out the underground. So I'm gonna go back online. And one thing that is going to happen is that both clients is going to synchronize, and you can see that the sequence has been maintained. So this is because we are using the timeline, and that means that we can keep all of the different devices synchronized, and we haven't asked the user, there was no user interaction, and what was going on the different devices is that the synchronizing engine was keeping all the data synchronized. And we use GraphQL to do that. And let me show you very quickly what information was being shared. So this is a mutation. So the synchronizing engine just sent the messages. So we can see one of the messages here. This is the message from the robot. And if we look at the information from let me see if I can show that information. We can see the different messages sent via WebSockets. Okay, so this is pretty much the demo that I wanted to show you today. So let's go back to the slides. A little bit of an overview of what you can do with PWAs. So we have that PWAs are faster because we have this pre-catch content. We can also use offline, of course. We use the full screen app. This is when we use the option add to home screen. And that will give the behavior that the user will think that is using a native app. There's also different platforms, so we can use also desktop and mobile. I didn't demonstrate desktop, but you can also add the PWA in your desktop and also use these native-like features. Overall, I will rate PWA slightly better than a web or single-page application. And this is probably giving you a lot of new options, and I totally recommend you to explore PWAs and Amplify DataStore. So one thing that I want to ask you is that you go ahead and try it, and in order to do that, I prepare a couple of resources. One is this, the solution, which is this chatty PWA app using Angular. And if you want to create the app from scratch, you have access to a workshop as well. That's all. Thanks for listening, and thank you for inviting me.